Hello, noble ones, and welcome to Metatron's Academy. Today we are listening to, believe it or not, Chomsky, but this is a very old interview. I mean, the video's from 9 years ago, but this is when he was young. He talks about the structure of language. I've never watched it. I have watched him speak mostly as an old man. Let's see what he tells us, though, as a young man about the structure of language, and let's see what we can learn from it. Let's go.
A specialist in the field, as you know, who believe that language is simply a matter of training, that a child can be trained to speak, and that there's nothing unique about this. You, I know, feel that there's something more than simply training. Why do you feel that there's something more to learning language than simply training?
Well, first of all, it's worth mentioning that most overwhelmingly people learn language without training. I mean, if you simply immerse a child in a situation in which language is spoken, he acquires this system.
But it's more than a response to the stimuli of the person around him speaking.
Well, the most obvious and sort of gross fact about language, which shows that, I think, is the innovative, creative character of it.
Yeah.
I mean, every child is capable of understanding and producing very complex structures which have no simple relationship, no point-by-point relationship, no relationship on the basis of analogy, let's say, to the experience that he's presented.
The generative, creative structures of language.
Just that you can, as we're talking, we say new things, which we may not have said before.
That's interesting. Yeah, that is. As a linguist, I've always found him fascinating. And one thing that I will say is I actually prefer him as an old man. I think he's always had a fantastic manner of speech. Its choice, selection of words, I've always found it fascinating, but particularly as an old man. But anyways, we don't just repeat prefabricated patterns and sentences all the time, which is one of the reasons why when you try to learn a language that way, I mean, it's fine occasionally to spice up your vocabulary because production is a little harder, right? It takes time to learn to spontaneously create a language in a way that makes sense. It's correct grammatically, syntactically, and well pronounced, of course. At speed, at a decent speed, it doesn't make for awkward pauses, and all that takes a lot of time. So sometimes it's nice as a little cheat code to learn a few pre-made sentences that you know you will probably say often, like how much is this, or can I pay with my credit card, or do I have to use cash? Like you can memorize these and kind of pre-made. But you can't learn an entire language pre-made. So eventually you'll have to get to a point that even if you use it as a little cheat code for increase in quality of speech, you will still have to dedicate a lot of time into the ability to naturally produce the language on demand.
We hear new things.
I mean, language, as we talk, there's very little repetition in what we say.
Well, if you really were to see how little repetition there is, you can, let's say, take a book or a newspaper or a library, for that matter, and search for repetitions of phrases or sentences and so on.
Very analytical.
They occur, but rarely so. I mean, there are particular subparts of language, say greetings or conventional utterances of one sort or another, that do repeat frequently, but these are incidentally often marginal in their structure. For example, a sentence like "How do you do?" has a structure which is, in fact, unique. It's not the structure of any English sentence. And we don't create new sentences of that type. That's just a ritualized utterance.
Yeah.
But most of our linguistic interchange is, in fact, highly innovative. And of course, it's not just random. I mean, it's innovative, but somehow appropriate to situations.
True. I want to say one thing about how do you do, because when I learned that, at least in England, and of course, I'm talking about memories from 20 years ago, 25 years ago. So you'll have to excuse me if some things may have changed. But I do remember that. So how do you do, for those who don't know, does not mean how are you. It means nice to meet you. So if someone tells you how do you do, you don't say very well, thank you, and you. At least in the formality of it, it is a little bit of formal talk, formal speech. If someone tells you, how do you do? You should respond, how do you do? That's it. Because it's just like, nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. That's how it works. And so, once again, it's a little older and I don't think people use it much anymore. But that's how it works. It's just that it's a little strange because when I learned that and occasionally used it, particularly if people used it to me, who's like older generation, they told me, how do you do? And I would tell them, how do you do? And then there is this pause of silence, because they are two questions, but they aren't questions in reality, and so they don't beg an answer, which always created a little bit of an awkward silence in my opinion, which is probably why, as an expression, I think it's not used anymore, I guess, in America. And in England, do people still use it? Probably only in extremely formal scenarios, and I'm going to say I don't know if the younger generation does anymore. Just an interesting food for thought.
Doesn't necessarily follow the rules that we were all taught in school of a subject and a predicate, or a noun and a verb. I mean, I would have the impression that somehow in my schooling I was taught to do what it is that I do now.
Yeah, well, people have that impression, but the reason is that the actual rules of language, which certainly are not taught in school, because in fact nobody even knows them to this day, are totally unconscious. I mean, what you're taught in school is some relatively superficial set of generalizations about some of the products.
Yeah.
Are they important? Is it important to know that?
Oh, I think it'd be important to know it, but the point that has to be stressed is that first of all, that everyone knows, speaks a language very fluently and very rich language before he ever goes to school. And furthermore, even if you wanted to teach somebody the rules of language, you wouldn't be able to do it because the rules are largely unknown. We're just barely beginning to discover them. It seems to us that there's no problem in speaking, just as it seems to us that there's no problem in, let's say, walking. But if we were to try to design an automaton, let's say, that would walk or ride a bicycle or identify a person. I mean, for example, you look at me from one point of view, and if I turn my face, you could still recognize me.
Yeah.
That's not so easy to do. I mean, we can do it because we have some special unknown capacities for perceptual identification. Well, in the case of language, too, we have this whole totally unconscious set of intricate mechanisms.
I mean, something's built.
It's, oh wow. This is, of course, from probably the 90s, 80s perhaps. I'd be interested to know what he thinks about advanced language models today. ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude AI, and all of that sort. Because linguistically they are impressive. I mean, you can hate them all you want. I myself have a lot of resentment towards certain aspects of AI, and I don't completely hate the technology, though. I'm fascinated by the technology. I think it's incredible what we have reached. I don't think it's ever going to be sentient in the same way we are, but that's more for philosophy, really. Then it's a question of philosophy, not a question of linguistics. But linguistically speaking, what these language models can do is mind-blowing. It is an automaton that can and will use language at a level of precision, not precision of information, they do mess up, but linguistically, the way they converse with you, the way they understand what you say and reply back. Man, I've had some conversations with AI that were more fulfilling the conversation with some morons sometimes in my life. So, how do they do it? The machines must have understood these patterns or know how to utilize or mimic them because it's a fake, but it's a highly convincing fake. And they must have learned this aspect that we still don't know how it works. And that's why we don't precisely know how they learn these languages and how they can be. Not even the programmers understand fully how these language models work, even though they made them.
Into the system.
Well, I have no doubt that most of the richness of the structure of language is just a biological property of the organism. Can't be taught any more than you can be taught to have two arms and two legs.
You've got no way that.
Man, I wish the guy didn't interrupt him. Like, I understand that this is structured as it's not a debate, but it's a conversation. But you gotta let him finish because what he was saying was very deep, and I want to hear it. I don't want to hear you trying to question him or tell him yes, but wait. Let him speak. Am I right?
You can X-ray it or
well,
put your finger on it.
At the moment, neurophysiology is not in a state where one can detect the physical structures that underlie linguistic use. I mean, only rather gross things are known. For example, it's known that language is controlled by the dominant. The brain has two hemispheres, and language is controlled by one dominant hemisphere. Incidentally, humans are, as far as I know, as far as anyone knows, the only organism that has lateralization, that has specialization of the two hemispheres.
Oh, very interesting. That could explain why we are the ones that use complex language then.
Don't, for example.
Functionally.
And this is, as is well known, this is closely connected with language. And areas of the brain are known that have special relevance to various language functions. But when you get into the detailed, intricate structure of the system, it's still a mystery, entire mystery. One might say the same about learning. Nobody knows anything about the neurology of learning either, for that matter.
Now, one of the most controversial things that you've come up with is the fact that what you're saying is true not only of English, but true of all languages. There's a commonality that runs through all languages. I would have guessed that some languages were so rigidly structured that if you learned a set of 20 rules, it would take care of all situations.
I don't know why you would guess that, but fine, if you used it as an item of conversation, it makes sense what Chomsky said.
Well, see, if what I just said before is true, that is, if a great deal of the structure of language is just a biological property that you bring to the learning situation, not something that you acquire in it, and if we further assume, as is unquestionably the case, that humans are not specifically adapted to learn one language or another, that is, there's no racial difference that makes it easier for you to learn this language or that language or something of that sort. From those two assumptions alone, it follows that all languages are going to be essentially uniform in that part of their structure which is biologically determined, just as there are only going to be certain possible limitations in the kind of gait that you can use when you walk. You can't fly, no human being's going to fly. We're all going to walk. We may walk in slightly different ways, and these may be culturally determined in part, and so on. Well, I don't want to press the analogy too far. There's more differentiation in language than that. But still, I think that there is simply a biologically determined, rich framework, which we can learn a lot about, incidentally. I think we can find out a good deal about it, and there are interesting theories about it.
So basically, we are looking at the top of the iceberg. Whenever we study, even in the most complex way, and whenever we reach fluency in another language, we are consciously, you see, I don't care if this is 9 years ago or in fact uploaded, but this is like 80s. I don't even care because this is deep. So we are just looking at the tip of the iceberg and consciously, and all the rest that we do, even when we reach fluency, we do it subconsciously, so we don't really understand what we're doing.
That predispose us to acquire a system of great complexity of a very specific sort on the basis of a very slight familiarity, a very slight exposure to data. See, one of the most remarkable things about acquisition of language is that the child, or for that matter an adult, has had very few seconds in his lifetime, and the total range of data available to him is rather small as compared with his ability to express himself and to produce and understand sentences and utterances and discourses as he does in his normal life. And that again indicates that there's a rich biologically determined structure, which therefore must be uniform across languages. Now, to get back to your original point, whether there are languages with a small number of rules that would suffice to explain everything, certainly nothing of that sort is known. I mean, insofar as languages have been carefully studied, living languages at least, they seem basically they do differ. I mean, one language is not another language, but they don't differ as far as we know.
There still is this creative aspect in all languages.
Well,
that is generated.
That's absolutely universal. That's just a human property. I mean, which is true of every language.
Which is true of every language. Love it. I think he looks best with a beard. Anyways, if you'd like me to review and go even deeper on some of these talks by Noam Chomsky, let me know. And let me know what you think. Thank you for watching.